letting go. Detaching. Releasing control, releasing grip on tangible but illusory stories to explain and justify away our existence and our presence, how we present, this is me, this is why. Not only that, questioning, doubting our own hearts, our own minds. Shoulda, woulda, coulda, you know. With me, it's family. And by that I mean blood family. The group of individuals that I was raised amongst. I've always been a loner. I was born, obviously. I was an only child for approximately 2 years and 5 months. When my brother was born, that dramatically changed the paradigm I'd been used to living. And then a couple of years later, my sister was born. Then a couple of years later, my youngest sister was born. We had some good times as children, playing out. Me and my brother Sam were best friends. We used to explore and climb trees and find pornographic magazines and, you know, tried our best to be children in a world which was becoming increasingly adult. We rarely argued or physically fought each other. But if we did, and we both knew about it, it was more my sisters that used to scrap when we were all children. Although me and my brother did have a ridiculous running feud at one point with Lee and John Sparrow. Until Sam offered Lee out, and then it all just stopped, and then we slowly became more friendly with each other. My sisters have always had each other really, but my sister Abby is very close with Sam. They live right by each other in my hometown. Well, that's not what it is anymore. Now it's just a council estate in North Solihull, named, ironically, Chelmsley Wood, because there used to be a lot of trees there. The woodland was taken, really, and they built tower blocks instead and kept the name. And just left the illusion of wood by allowing some trees, ever dwindling. So, Shannon. Shannon was born on my 6th birthday. I've only ever been trying to find myself. Firstly in the world, then the real way, through internal investigation and exploration, wherever that took me in this world. I've learned aloneness, which appears very separatist and divisive, but that's the Jesus life, appearing contrary to the actual intention. We only ever work on ourselves for the benefit of everybody. I love every single one of my family. And on paper that might not seem the case because I'm not in communication with them, although I could be. And yet they are not in communication with me, and yet they also could. So my process at the moment is to consolidate that information, regardless of how powerful and great my God, our God is. Love wins, yeah. But earthly circumstances take a while to catch up, and there are too many variables for my energy or focus to be anywhere but here. So I learned what it is to be living in the place of your birth and yet not have support. In the Bible it says a prophet shall receive no honour in his hometown. Now I was aware of that scripture before I lived it, which softened the blow somewhat. So we all grew up, got older, aged, developed. All I ever wanted in this world was to get tall enough and wise enough to have a wife and children. But up to yet, I've been gifted the tumbleweeds instead, the echo, the space that awaits that. Because if I would have taken a shortcut and had children, or been unfortunate enough through my own ignorance and stupidity, whatever, to be responsible for a child in this life at any point before now, well, I was still living through patterns of harmful behaviour that cannot be passed on, should not be passed on, will not be passed on to children. So that would have made raising a child more of a battle, because that child is me to some degree. So if I can't take care of myself, there's no way I can take care of two myselves. But I can take care of myself. This is always the objective. So, I grew up, had 0 children, approximately. Sam, who lives with his, to all intents and purposes, wife, but they're not married. Or they weren't, the last time I heard. Lives in a 2-bedroom flat with Ellie, who is almost 14, I believe. I don't really know. I've lost track of dates and ages and times and Ellie and Freddie, Jacob and Freya, and Abby, who married John, lives in a house just around the corner from where my nan lived. And they have Eden Rose, who was born very, very prematurely and weighed about a pound. But she's got a heart of gold. All the children have. So, during the years when the children were growing up, I was going through my own process of de-individuation and trauma release, soul retrieval, deep, deep searching. So I wasn't present, really. And the importance of uncles was never really highlighted in my life. It wasn't reflected. I saw my uncle a bit, but he had his own life. He didn't really live that close. But I tried my best to be there, and I stopped buying birthday presents because guilt is not a motivating factor in my life, and I'm not a hypocrite. So I'd rather just let the whole calendar year ring out as one long silence than have a token gesture, because, well, knowing that it was my intention to be in contact. But then it was just like, well, that's just a one-way street, isn't it? That's just me trying to keep people in my life. So I would turn up on Christmas Day, empty-handed. And just spend time with the children, which is like any other day. Because it's nice to be quiet and have a bit of fun, isn't it, really? Christmas Day is very noisy. Who I am, the way that I've lived my life, the choices I make, the opinions and beliefs that I voice, have been used against me as a way to justify keeping me at arm's length. Or having restricted access to children that I hold dearly. So the common ground is love. But families, which are the biggest cults going, and there's so many of them, if families aren't emotionally mature or responsible, then communication can't happen. Proper, beneficial communication. To be the scapegoat of any group, it's not a great task. But one of my favourite proverbs, and I don't even know which tribe it comes from, but it's a Native American proverb. The wounded buffalo turns to face the arrows of the tribe, for he knows that all of him will be used. But that's all very well, isn't it? But some people love to point and kill. And I'm here for life. Death will have its way with all of us. That's not my concern. Only humans who can celebrate my success in this life can be in my inner circle, because anything else is madness. I've had enough of the madness. I've put so many prayers up to heaven about my family's peace and well-being. As a child, I was far too close with my mother. Far too open, far too honest. But my mum wasn't close with me. As a firstborn son especially, you have no choice but to feel the pain of your mother. And as humans, as empathic humans, when you feel somebody's pain, you just want to love them harder, so that they get it, so that they feel loved. But the thing about pain is, the pain that we hold on to, that's the excuses for not receiving love. That's the shield. I I'm done supposing what the normal or common human response to anything would be or should be in this life. And I don't have children, so I don't know what it's like, but yet somehow I do. Because I've experienced a child. Not one that was gifted to me, no, sure, but that would only add to the amazement and wonder and love. Half of the battle is finally understanding that we could never, should never, not if we want to feel any measure of success. We should never expect to receive our own heart back from others, because everybody has their own heart with its own strengths and weaknesses and capacity. There is no human in this life that is more important than the next. After I'd been attacked and arrested, in a situation where the man who attacked me did not get arrested, in a day full of trauma and close to the bone, death was around that day. It was stalking me. But angels were there. I was protected. Anyway, I digress. With my one phone call, I rang my mother and just clear my throat. Yes. I rang my mother. Now, the context for her response in the conversation is following. The man who attacked me now had a wonderful opportunity to paint a picture and create a story about what happened so that other people believe this to be the case, because, well, it's a good few hours I'm getting dealt with, right? So I said, "Hey Mum, how are you doing?" And she said something along the lines of, "Oh, not very well, because of all this that's going on." This, right? Like, and I laughed and I said, "Join the club." Okay, that's interesting. What does she think happened? Well, I said, "Well, I'm at the police station. This is my one phone call. I've got nowhere to stay." And she said, "You can't stay here." And I put the phone down. Well, my mum knew the alternative. That's me just being somewhere. So either she knew what really happened or something similar, disregarded that, or she believed me capable of whatever it is that she was told, and therefore was frightened of me. I don't think it's that. It's that my presence makes my mum feel uncomfortable because my mum has lived a life hiding things from people, from herself. It's that the love that flows through me is too painful for her to receive. It's that me being on the streets gets to be part of her story, and how it's a choice that I've chosen to separate myself from her and not be in communication with her. And it's okay. I am free. I have the choice. I can choose to sit with anybody and hold their shame, their pain, their anything, right? But that's a double-ended choice. Every human has the luxury of choice with regards to what they say, what they don't say, what they do, what they reveal about the things they have done or not. I was physically removed from my hometown time and time again because I kept going back there, kept trying to be in service to people who were serving themselves as a group, as a unit, as a cult. To the point where I was just staying in a tent. That was because my focus was on other humans who weren't grateful for the very little that they allowed me to bring. And I'm not here to dim the light that flows through me, that is me, at all. I'm here to increase the light quotient on this earth. So it gets a bit bright, doesn't it? You know? And people want to reduce the vision. They don't want to see the full glory that is another human, confident, expressive. They try to see just the shadow. So people will try to drag you down to keep your vibration low. So the light doesn't get turned up. But when we're so confident, strong-minded and hearted about who we are, we actually see the roles that people play in our lives, what they're reflected back to us, how life can change. And our idealism is what sets us up for suffering. It's not survival of the fittest. It's about who's most adaptable. Life is subject to conditions. It can't be measured or anticipated. The soul sets out to seek and secure so many specific situations. Just a character in a computer game, really. That's all we are. Getting power-ups and strengthening our armour. Finding potions. Fighting bosses. I think at the very end of the first disc in the game, the end of game boss is the relationship you have with your parents, your family unit, but mostly your parents, because any anger or bitterness that you hold in your heart towards anybody in this life will kill you. Quite simply. Not to mention, any inter-bloodline conflict, that template will be passed to your children. But it doesn't matter, because all is healed eventually, and that's retrospectively and futuristically. So I love my parents, and that is taken into account. That as it stands, I am aware that I don't actually know 100%, for real, for definite, who my father is. Because I was given the information from an invisible source that I trust. When I raised awareness of this to the man who is written as my father on my birth certificate, and I asked him to treat this information very sensitively, considering it was about him, you know, that's his business, what he does, and so what he chose to do, perfect opportunity, he threw that hand grenade right into the middle of the whole family unit, and then watched me take the flak. So now there's another way that everybody is a victim of me in the life that I am living. But the truth is that he is not my father. It's just that nobody is willing to tell me the truth about it in physical, so at some point I will take matters into my own hands, and I will get a paternity test or have some sort of DNA test done. Because I don't trust anybody in this life, because I know that humans have their own interests and will disguise or slightly mask the truth, given an opportunity, if it saves them the embarrassment of having to admit something that they've done. Everybody has the choice to do that, that's fine. That very same man, by the way, was also the man who physically assaulted me. So it's like, again, I don't know what it means. I don't know what it feels like to be a father, to have children of my own. But I would definitely never punch them in the nose when they weren't even looking at me. 100%. Because I would never do that to anybody. Because I'm not a pussy. But that's what happened. And what also happened afterwards, as my fight or flight response kicked in, because that came out of, not out of nowhere, but I ended up biting him. I'm pulling his earring out and gouging his eyeball. That was all my defence. Then a 15-minute physical tussle ensued where I was literally just defending myself, just holding him off. Having to look at the blood on his face. From something I had done. Whilst also having to look at him, dead behind the eyes, intent on causing me as much harm as possible. That's definitely not a father. But luckily, and don't get it twisted, I was not innocent in that at all. That was the climax, right? But that day, things had to be spoken. Whatever came through that day was a very, very holy experience. I had told him that I haven't been able to respect him in this life because I've never seen him stand up for what is right or stand up for himself. And ironically, that was the moment he chose to prove me wrong. I've already shared this prayer with him, but I just pray that he can forgive himself and be honest. Because that man actually has been like a best friend to me in this life. But for that to happen, that's just... The day that actually happened, I had brought him a gift. And it said, Dad and best friend on it. Ironic. So, we can't force any other human to be honest in this life. And I'm not saying that we should all be hyper cynical. But if people say they're going to do something and we hang our hat on that and then they don't, well then what? If people just aren't fulfilling the criteria. Look, what anybody does in this life is none of my business, right? It's just not. I am blessed by life. We all are. family is not more important than the family next door, or a caterpillar that you see going about his day, or trees. All human life is valuable. Families are separatist and selfish by their very nature. An individual cannot exist within a group of humans, any group of humans that seeks its own end. Family will want an individual to just be small so that it can be like family. When a man and a woman have a child, they might perceive themselves to lose more than they gain, because maybe a certain amount of your dreams and aspirations go down the drain when you have a child. And maybe unconsciously, if you don't work with that raw material, if you're not aware, but then there's going to be a certain amount of resentment, isn't there? And therefore, that's not the most motivational and supportive energy that you could be bringing. The life that I had to experience adulterated me from the very offset. It forced me to raise myself and be raised and grow up, and to come to a more mature understanding of the world far later and more developed than my actual physiology and chemistry. And therefore my development was arrested in so many different ways. I had to know an awful lot about the world. But only in an intellectual way. I guess you could say I emotionally matured as well, but not really. I think I just developed the capacity to numb myself and find things and ways to distract myself through understanding how other humans interact with this world like that. So I desensitized myself at a much earlier age than most humans. That's all. I've tried to build the momentum of a little side quest called ringing my nan, for example. And it's like any energy I put into that, into Chelmsley Wood, into any of that, is just gonna taint whatever healing is going on there. People have probably heard my name too much. So it's like that family and I are just separately having a fresh start. And I've had to shed so much guilt and shame so many harmful ideas. Making myself hyper accountable and scanning, Again, shoulda, woulda, coulda. But one of my favourite sentences that ever came to me, through me, is, ifs and buts tear like paper cuts through that which is sacred. Meaning, life as it is presented to you right now is what you got. Don't let that fascination and gratitude be taken speaking about optional extras that you can't afford right now, or worrying about your next upgrade. Life is amazing. There is no such thing as love lost or wasted. Nothing is beyond reprieve. I pray for reconciliation of all broken family units and for all to come to peace and speak their words from a place of love.